Even that word vulnerability, I feel like therapy has, well, messed it up a little bit
Oh,
because we tend to feel like vulnerability almost as a weakness.
mm.
And the way I think of vulnerability is no, it's a real indication of where I got hurt growing up.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health Counseling and Behavioral Health Counseling here in Iowa.
And I'm Tanisha. I'm a mental health and wellness advocate. And the purpose of the podcast, or the mission of the podcast, You Need a Counselor, is designed for people curious about counseling, but who have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good or bad or indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today joins us. We've got Dr. Randall Alifano here with us today, joining us from California. And Dr. Randall is a Ph.D. in clinical psychology and is also an ordained minister and has been doing that work for over 40 years. So he does a lot of work integrating the psychology world and the spiritual world within his practice, where he works with individuals, just helping people to listen to themselves, to listen to those internal things, those dreams, those instincts, those things that sometimes in our day-to-day world just get overlooked, those things that get crowded out by the busyness of our day-to-day. So we are very, very excited to welcome Dr. Randall here today. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here.
So how interesting to kind of work with psychology, but also work with spirituality. And so many times in our society, I think that there's a message that these are completely different things, that these need to be categorized out in our lives. So tell us more about how you meld these two aspects of who we are as humans.
Well, that's actually a good question. When I was in college, no, just after I graduated college and I moved out to San Francisco, um, one of the top professors here at San Francisco State, um, I had a meeting with him because I was thinking about starting graduate studies, and I said I have an interest in blending psychology and spirituality, and he put me down. He said, "Have you even read Plato?" And I said, "Well, yes, I have." He says, "These are two completely different disciplines. They don't belong together at all." So I ended up not going to San Francisco State. 5 years later, he gave a talk about a book he wrote about integrating psychology and spirituality. And at the end of the talk, I went to him and said, "Do you remember me? I was a potential student, maybe wanting to study with you, and you put me down." And he said, and he just looked at me like this arrogant guy, and he said, "Well, I've changed my mind." And I thought, yeah, I still don't really want to speak with you. So because to me it always seemed clear that if you separate these things out, you're splitting humans in half, that you need to bring them together.
Well, how have your patients and clients responded to the mixing of the two? Like, what success have you had by integrating psychology and spirituality with
It,
both?
it's really individual. Some people have no interest in spirituality. They just want to do psychological work, and that's fine with me. And we just focus on that then. And then there are people who really do want to integrate both, talk about both. Um, And so I don't push any agenda on them. I let them lead the way. But if they do want to talk about spirituality, whether it's within a particular religion, or if it's just their connection to the divine, or however they want to phrase it, I'm on board because I think a great deal of comfort and connection can happen through spirituality. And what I notice when even the name of your podcast, well, I thought of, yeah, we need counselors because there's such a profound sense of aloneness in who we are. And so, to me, one level of contact is with other humans, other people, but something even beyond that, within humanity and also outside humanity, is spirituality. And when people can connect to that, that incredible sense of aloneness ebbs, and we start to feel one with instead of separate.
Absolutely. And I think so many times in our culture and in our society, there's this connection between spirituality and religion. And I think that sometimes those two ideas and two very important sections of maybe who we are can get very entangled and very enmeshed. And sometimes people have experiences with religion that they might bring into their relationship with their spirituality. Can you speak a little bit about the difference between the two and how somebody might find a difference between spirituality and religion?
Well, that's really tricky. I think it's also applicable to psychology in general. But for example, I work with someone who's a devout Roman Catholic, and he's very, very focused on the Bible and his interpretation of the Bible. And I also work with someone who's a Muslim, and he's very Muslim. And I may have my thoughts about, well, maybe we can expand that a little bit, but it doesn't grab me to go there because this is where they land. So what I try to do is if they're talking about some section of the Bible, for example, I want to find out how intimately it affects them. Because usually if they're focused on one particular aspect of the Bible, it's something, there's some conflict in them they're trying to get resolved. And they're searching the path they know to get it resolved. And it may be helpful. It also may be constricting. So depending on how they're relating to it, that will dictate how I approach the conversation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It sounds like, I mean, I think that sometimes there's this thought with spiritual counseling or with counseling that has a religious flavor to it, that there might be, limitation on that, right? Because everybody's interpretation, everybody's, practice is so different, even within the same religion. And so I think sometimes in the counseling world, there is that feeling of, oh, am I going to be Christian enough for this Christian counselor, right? Am I going to be religious enough for this person? Am I too religious for this counselor to be able to understand? And what I'm hearing you say is that the client is where the client is. So the religion that the client holds is the religion that that client holds, and it really isn't for us as counselors to have to be an expert on that religion, to have to practice that religion, to have to know about that religion, but to be in tune with what that religion means for this client, how that client interprets it and
Well
feels.
said. And to me, one of the chapters in the book is filters. And I feel like it's the same thing with us therapy types, is if I'm a psychoanalytic therapist, my perspective is somewhat contained. If I just follow Winnicott, it's all. So how do we expand beyond maybe our education or attachment to a particular theoretical style so that we can hear more? One of my big problems nowadays, even when I was coming up, but I think it's even worse now, is the emphasis on assessment, diagnosis, and then treating the diagnosis. And I think, okay, no, let's learn that. That's important. But if we reduce the person I'm speaking to down to a diagnosis, that I have to heal them of their depression or their anxiety, then I have a filter on that's really thick. And I start hearing things along the lines of their depression, for example, instead of all of who they are. So to me, it works both ways.
That's the part I like that you said all of who they are. Because one thing that I do on my social media platform, because I do like mental health and wellness on my social media platforms, and the wellness part of what I do, and I try to explain to people is you have to take care of the mind and the body and the soul. I always tell people I don't try to project whatever they choose to believe, but I feel like somebody should believe in something other than their self. Because I do believe your belief system plays a part in your mental health as well. Um, I think people need to have some type of component of some form of spirituality of what they believe. I don't know what that belief system is. I always tell them I'm not here to debate what you choose to believe. Your belief is your belief. Because I always say, me and you both could sit down and read the Bible. We're gonna have different interpretations based on how we were raised, our environments, and different things like that. So we are gonna take something different from it, and it's all stems from those things. I said, nobody never we both could read the same thing, but we're not going to take away the exact same. We're not going to have the same takeaway from it
Yes.
if we read the same book, and it's based on experiences.
Yeah.
I said, so you're going to always get into a disagreement about the Bible and things like that. So it's a no-win argument. You're not gonna win an argument, with someone talking about, you know, um, debating somebody's religion. So I choose not to even go there with anyone. You can choose to believe what you want to believe, but I always tell somebody, believe in something. I'm never going to argue with somebody about what they choose to believe. That's one thing that's huge to me. But I do like the fact that you said, seeing the whole person. And that's the thing, like not just a diagnosis, not just one particular thing, because when you do peel back the layers of what's going on with an individual, is deeper than just an actual depression. You'll find like this person could be dealing with some type of childhood trauma, like it's just not on the surface level of what it is that you're seeing at that moment. It becomes so much more deeper than what you could be seeing at that time.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yes, exactly that. And even if I'm working with someone who's, quote, depressed, if my filter is, oh, I have to help them get out of depression, I feel like I've already lost. As opposed to leaning in with curiosity of what's it like for you when you get up? What's it feel like in your body, like you said, and in your thought process? What if you were to define your depression, how would you define it? When you're with your partner or when you're alone, what's your relationship to it? Where they get to really start to question what is this thing I label depression? And it feels like a heavy blanket on me because there may be some little spark in there that they haven't found yet. So just to label it something, depression, for example, and then leave it alone because, oh, I get it, they're depressed. Haha, I got it. You miss the whole, wonderful smorgasbord of questions that could be asked where they get to explore underneath the blanket of all the good things that are going on, like you said, in all of who they are. So yes, yes, yes. And in terms of spirituality, I don't know why, but the free association I had when you talked about it was, there are many, I don't know, strict Christians who are against homosexuality. And yet, Jimmy Carter, who I thought was a beautiful man, he said, I've read the Bible dozens of times. He said homosexuality was all going on back in those days. Jesus never said anything negative about homosexuality. And I thought, look at this. The president of the United States is saying, I don't know that you guys have this whole thing right about gay folks. And I think that's courage. He didn't just buy into the filter. He thought, wait a minute, Christ never said anything about it. Why wouldn't he? Just to open up the field.
I think it brings up a great topic of, religious wounds and spiritual wounds that happen to us. And so many of us, find such strength and hope in our spiritual side and our spiritual lives, but so many also have wounding and have hurts, and traumas that have occurred. And a lot of times that will have to do with religion, or will have to do with other people that we associate maybe with religion, or with religious views that have been reflected to us by a person, as opposed to religious views or spiritual views that we have experienced ourselves.
From
Uh,
the inside out, right?
from the inside out, exactly right. And so I think for so many, there is this sense of, well, maybe spirituality isn't for me, or maybe religion isn't for me because I'm fill in the blank, right? Because I don't feel this way, or because I do feel this way, or because I don't fit this mold or that mold. Can you talk to us a little bit about how people can kind of overcome that feeling or sense of, nope, I don't belong to that?
That's a very good question, and I think it's a dissertation length answer. Um, I think it's again, like we were speaking about earlier, the integration of psychology and spirituality, because, I was raised Roman Catholic. So inherent in that is a lot of shaming. If you say a bad word, if you do this, you have to go to confession, you're a sinner. And so if someone's raised with, I'm a shameful person, which, and just quickly, how I define shame and guilt. Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am something wrong. So if you're raised with the ongoing repetition of there's something wrong with you because you still say bad words or whatever the sin is, that sticks to the bones. And you grew up feeling like, oh, I'm a bad person. So you could stay within the religion and feel like, I'm still a shameful person. You could also break out of the religion in kind of a rebellion, but you've still got that shame that you have to deal with. And so, yeah, I think it can go both ways. And at the same time, you could be raised in a Christian family that is expansive and takes all the beauty of what Christ offered in terms of love and understanding and taking care of your neighbor and inviting immigrants, I might say, and open up your heart to other humans and yourself in a loving and accepting way. So how a particular religion is fed down to the individual is more important, psychologically speaking, than the religion itself, because it has millions of interpretations of how it's disseminated to folks.
I just think now, like some people get not the spirituality part. I think religion in itself gets such a bad name because um, so many people use religion in a negative way. They use it to manipulate, they use it to um, con and, take advantage of like the elderly people or, a lot of people who are like fast talkers, and you have some of these mega churches who, you know, you have people in the church who, don't have food or, just have a lot of things going on and um they don't try to help the parishioners, but they constantly want them to give, give, give. And from a religious perspective. And then a lot of things too, like even with the homosexuality, like they preach so much, like talking down on it. And then, yeah, you find out the pastor is sleeping with members of the church. And it's like, you're a big hypocrite, So in those instances, it's like when you find out certain preachers are study preaching so negatively about homosexuality, these are be the same preachers who you find out sleeping with members of the church or sleeping with, underage people in the church. Like, so it's like it turns people away from the church. And even what you say, far as like shaming, you know, I know like during the time, like when I was in church, oh, it was a dress code. You couldn't come if you didn't have a long skirt past your knee, like down to your ankles and all of this type of stuff. But I remember when people was in church, well, a Baptist church at the time that my grandmother went to, the women would go out and party on Saturday and drink and show up in church on Sunday. So that was like weird to me. Like I didn't understand it. It made no sense to me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like as you become an adult and you learn more about, you know, spirituality yourself, it's like certain things is hypocritical. Like you learn, it's like this don't match. Like this don't go hand in hand. Like how does this work? So it's like you preaching one way on Sunday, but you acting this way on Saturday. Like it's not going hand in hand. So it's like it just turns you away from it turns you away from because it's like you live in a lie, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? It don't mesh, you
I,
know.
again, yes, yes. I talk about integrating psychology and spirituality. Sometimes I talk about separating them out because, like you're saying, a minister of a megachurch perhaps is doing exactly what you're saying. That's a person who's lost psychologically and using spirituality as a justification for their acts. So I want to get in there with a little bit of a wedge and go, wait, 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 wait. Stop talking about Christ because you're sleeping with underage kids. That's a psychological disturbance that's not only ugly, but you're doing damage, profound damage. So sit down, don't talk to me about Christ, and let's talk about why don't you see the ugliness you're perpetrating on others? Like you gotta separate it out a little bit because people will use spirituality or religion as a justification for their acts. And it's ugly. That's my bias, but it's ugly. I couldn't agree with you more on that one. And I
Absolutely.
think right now, politically, it's all over the place.
Absolutely. And so, how do we quiet all of that noise around us and separate that out? Because for me personally, I can really relate with what Tanisha is expressing, and so for me, spirituality really had to be something completely separate. And or not separate from psychology and who I am, but separate from religion. And for me, um, all of that external, uh, all of those pieces had to be separated out. I had to say, okay, what does it, when you talk about connection, right? And when you talk about believe in something, right? We're built to believe, we're built to connect, we're built to lean on something, right? Whether that is other people or whether that's a belief in an idea, a big idea like hope, right? We're built to rely on that and depend on that and be able to believe that everything isn't on our shoulders, right? That we don't have to save the world. And so that, when we can get down to kind of that quietness and go, okay, at the heart of it, right? What does believing in that, whatever it is, mean for me, right? Not what does it mean to the world and not what does it mean to our family or our neighbor, but what does it mean to me in my daily practice, right? When I wake up and I need coffee, what does that mean to me? And it's challenging to quiet that, to quiet those external things and to focus on that, because we're also told in our society, don't be selfish, right? That we're all in it for the bigger good and the common good and all of that. And it's a challenge to focus in on, no, for me as an individual, right? what does this mean to me? When I read this scripture, what does that mean? Because scriptures, religious texts, spiritual stories, they're mirrors. They are reflecting, they're going to reflect on us whatever we're ready to see about ourselves in that moment and in that situation. And it's a hard thing to do. It's a really, really hard thing to do. Um, so what's might somebody, if they're experiencing that, if they've had those experiences and gone, oh, I don't feel like that's for me, right? What are maybe some things that we can do to kind of be a little bit open to spirituality, or even if we're very religious, right? What are some of those things you talked about? Yep, sometimes I've got clients who are extremely religious, but it narrows the focus a little bit. So how do we expand that? How do we open ourselves up to that in either direction?
Again, this is a really big question. I have two responses that come to mind. One, if someone's reading, for example, scripture, the I would love, as they're about to read, for them to realize what what stands out to them about what they're reading may have more to do with their own filters than what's in the text. They may read one sentence and just scoot right by it because it doesn't resonate with their filter. And the next sentence they'll really take in, and that becomes what they just read because they're not paying attention to, I'm so biased in my perspective. The other thing that comes to mind, and I do this every day as a counselor, is the ground of my spirituality is I don't know. I'm profoundly limited as a human being. So when someone starts to talk to me, I'll hold, I'm quiet. That's a really great word to use, I think, to quiet the mind, to soften the body, that I don't know. And with my curiosity, I'm going to keep on exploring until I have almost a somatic response of, oh, do you mean this? And then even ask a question to make sure I'm really getting it. So to me, for us humans, we're so profoundly limited in our perspective to find refuge in, I don't know. I'm profoundly limited. I don't know. And start from there. So when I'm speaking to a client, that opens up the field. Instead of them feeling like I'm trying to get them into a particular pathology or whatever, they feel like, oh, this guy really wants to hear from me all the way down to my toes. I, and the only way I can do that is if I embrace with humility, I don't know. Uh, I'm resting in the unknown until you and I connect to a point where we're both collaborating together about a certain stream that we're following. That was a little obscure, but do you get what I'm trying to say? And I think that's a problem with therapists these days is there's such pressure on us to know what's going on all the time and then to give brilliant interpretations as opposed to, wait a minute, let me sit back, take a breath, feel my body, and approach with curiosity and see where we go.
I always tell people on my platform, and even with my own experience with counseling and therapy, I tell them that, your counselor or your therapist is not there to fix you. I say you have to do the work, like you have to be willing to do the work. And I say, it's not going to be an overnight process. Like everything is, you know, when you go in there, the expectation, like some people like, oh, I tried it and it didn't work for me. And I'm like, what do you mean it didn't work for you? You have to be open to do the work. You have to, um, I say it's like an onion. You have to peel back layers. I said you have to do the work though. I said a counselor and a therapist just give you the tools to be able to know how to, manage your stress or depression or whatever issue that you're dealing with at that time, or to know how to navigate certain situations, but they can't fix you. like, like you got to think this is years of, something that you've been dealing with, um, they're just here to like navigate through the process of what it is you're dealing with. Even when they, talk about like medication and things like that, like, oh, I tried this medication and it didn't work. I said, it's not a Tylenol. I said, these are psychosis medication. It take anywhere from, like 6 to 8 weeks, not before it get in your system. I said, even with that, I said, it might not be the right dosage. It might not be the right medication for you. They might have to tweak it a little bit. I said, so you thinking like this is a Tylenol or ibuprofen. That's not what this is. I said, so you can't say the medication didn't work. You didn't give it a chance to work. I said, so I said, you either the person, whoever you're seeing prescribe the medication didn't explain that to you. I said, but that's not how these medications work. And I said, you can't abruptly stop taking it. I said, because these are medications that cause chemical, help with chemical imbalances. You can't just, stop taking it. You have to be weaned off these type of medications. I said, so, you know, you doing these things, you can be doing more harm to yourself than good. But me saying all that is to say, like I was just on my platform last night and I was saying that because people ask me like, how do I pour so much into people all the time. Like, what do I do for myself? But I said, I don't wake up, every day, on a good foot. Like I have to pour into myself every morning. Like I have to when I wake up, I do my meditation, I do my daily devotional. I have to pour into me first because you can't pour from an empty cup. I can't give to, before I pick my phone up or even go look on social media, anything, I have to pour into me first and make sure I'm good before I'm able to come online and pour into other people or people calling my phone, want advice or help or something like that. You can't. I have to be able to refuel myself. If I'm not in a good headspace, I don't even go online because I don't want to take that energy out um, on someone else. Like now I have a family member who's really, really sick. So sometimes when things are going on, I can't, if my mind is like stressed, I can't go online because I don't want to have that energy, you know, um, or feel like irritated, somebody asking me something. So I just choose not to go online when I'm like that because I'm the type of person I can't hide my emotions when I'm dealing with something that's going to show. So,
Well, to me, that's actually lovely to hear because to me, it sounds like you have integrity, that you're self-aware enough to know that if I approach other when I'm tight with stress or
mhm,
whatever, that's what's going to be communicated and probably not that helpful.
yeah,
So I want to take responsibility for that, meditate, do whatever I need to do to calm that down, and then I'll come forward. And the
yeah,
other thing you said that it's a big bugaboo for me is, and you even put air quotes, fix. One of the problems I have with psychology is we have to fix something, which means something's broken, or we have to heal something, which means something's sick. So that works well for medicine. If I'm sick, I want the doctor to heal me. But I think in psychological terms, it gets in the way of the other word you used, which was navigate. So we're in a stream, we're navigating this thing. You're suffering in this way or that way. You probably got hurt in childhood or whatever. Let's navigate and see where this river takes us, as opposed to my job is to heal you. Because then the client feels like, oh, and let's face it, our whole society buys into this language also that we need to be healed. We're all sick or broken or something, and it's like, no, 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 no. Let's get out of that paradigm. That's not the one. That's not where we exist. So you could wake up feeling stressed and go, uh-oh, I need to fix myself. No, you need to sit, maybe meditate, come back home to, why am I stressed? Oh, my family member. I'm so brokenhearted for them, or whatever it is. Oh, there's feelings in here. Drink that in. and then you come home to yourself. It's actually one of the reasons why the subtitle of my book is Coming Home to Receptivity, is if we're not really home, we're not receiving. So I love what you just said.
Absolutely. There's that authenticity of saying, nope, I'm not going to push it myself. I'm not going to pretend, right, that I'm okay today when I'm not. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm not, and I'm going to not be okay until I am okay. Uh,
Right.
there's that authenticity. And speaking of your book, it's called Listening in the Raw, Coming Home to Receptivity. And tell us a little bit about that, because you've talked a lot here about listening and authenticity and letting things be the way that they're going to be. Tell us more about that.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason I titled it Listening in the Raw is um, when I was writing my dissertation, I wanted to write about what I was experiencing in my practice, which was which I called empathic surrender, meaning I had to let go. I sit in the unknown, for example, so that I felt actually penetrated by what the person was talking about, even under their narrative. I would just have these feelings, these somatic contractions or whatever. And I thought, oh my God, there's magic in there. And the more I surrendered and opened instead of tried to be clever or smart or a healer, there was such an intimate contact with the person and what they were struggling with at that moment. And to me, that was the most profound way to end aloneness, where most of the suffering we go through is because we feel alone in it. And when someone can really listen in the raw, meaning really allow yourself to experience not only just in your head and a theory, but even in your body, in your soul, what it's like for them, suddenly aloneness is shattered. And we're two people, to use your term, earlier term, navigating this stream that hasn't been navigated before. So to me, the work of a counselor, minister, therapist, parent, partner is to have times where you just get out of the way and follow curiosity until you have a felt experience of what it's like over there.
What made you want to write this book at this moment in time?
Well, that's another good question. I come from a big New York Italian family. So every Sunday you go to Nan's house. She cooks the best food in the universe. And everybody sits at this huge table. And even as a kid, I had some sensitivity to everybody was talking over everybody else and nobody was listening. And I was flummoxed by it. I thought, why is Dad interrupting Uncle Jen? And then Uncle Jen then is interrupting. Nobody's nobody's making connection. They're just all talking over each other. And I became, at a very early age, profoundly curious about, well, kind of like John Wayne said. He said, we're long on tongue and short on ears." That we were so off balance. And then, of course, that set me up to become a therapist because what else am I going to do? Um, and I had the same experience of when I would talk to other therapists, they were more interested in what they could offer in terms of speech instead of what they could offer in terms of really listening. So after many, many years of being in my office and having all these thoughts in my head about listening, it kind of flew out of me. I just wanted to start to write about what gets in the way of really listening. And then when we're really listening, what are we listening for? And I realized it was innocence. Um, if you've seen a child, a very, very young child, they know exactly what they want and exactly what they don't want. You give I don't know, 9-month-old some steamed broccoli and they put it in their mouth and they're like, ugh, no, no, they push it out. They're not trying to be polite. They're just, no, 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 no. 5 seconds later, you give them vanilla ice cream and they're wearing it. Yes, 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 I love this. until that's programmed out of us. Our parents say, no, you should eat your broccoli, or you don't talk to your parents like that, or da da da. And we start to cover up that innocence, that intimate, ingrained, innate knowledge of who we are, what works for us, what doesn't work for us. And so with curiosity, I wanted to learn about an individual's innocence, how they're how they're wired, what brings them alive. Why are they in love with that person? It's just endless curiosity about who you are all the way down underneath your defenses, your filters, and what you're aching for. And when that's even touched, not even maybe described fully, aliveness happens. So when I was writing the book, that was an ongoing practice for me is from which place am I writing? To be famous? Ugh, no, not that. To be the smartest guy in the no, not that. I was writing from what was passionate for me, what I'm aching for in life, that I want to listen to people all the way down to the core, and I want people to listen to me all the way down to the core. And people weren't talking about it from that perspective. So it kind of poured out of me, and that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, I love that. That authenticity, that like what would we do if there was nobody around? What would we do if nobody was going to judge us or yell at us or be upset with us? What would we do in a vacuum? What would make us happy in a vacuum? Is There's a lot of layers on top of that, right? There's a lot of layers on, oh, I don't like this broccoli, right? That come up
Right,
even with that example, right?
right, right.
So I just think it's so pure. There's a lot of vulnerability that goes into that, into being able to say, nope, I like this, I don't like this. It takes a lot of vulnerability to do that, and it takes a person willing and enthusiastic to listen to
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
uh, in order to be able to be vulnerable in that way.
Right. Even that word, vulnerability, I feel like therapy has, well, messed it up a little bit
Yeah.
because we tend to feel like vulnerability almost as a weakness.
Mm,
And the way I think of vulnerability is no, it's a real indication of where I got hurt growing up.
yeah.
So I'm a man, New York Italian, don't cry. You're a sissy pants if you cry.
Mm,
And so if I start to feel tears of vulnerability, that's a weakness. I'm
mm,
cool. What's up, As opposed to, oh, there's some real gold in here. There's a tender part of me that's being touched. What is that? And so to me now, even as an old man, if I feel vulnerable, the thought that comes up is, oh, I've just touched a trailhead that's teaching me I got ripped off someplace as a kid
mm,
about some quality of me. So it instead of it being, uh-oh, vulnerability, protect, it's vulnerability, jump in.
engage. Hmm.
There's something in here.
Hmm.
Um, so to me, vulnerability is it's a sign that I've gotten hurt someplace, shut down someplace from the outside, not from the inside. And
Hmm.
that vulnerability is trying to lead me to someplace, and my bias is to innocence that has been covered up.
Hmm.
So even that just simple reinterpretation, vulnerability becomes exciting of, oh, here we go. Here's another roller coaster. We're about to see what happens.
Absolutely. When I think about vulnerability as a strength, I often think about my cat because he will lay on the floor, just belly up, right? Legs like this, just completely, he has not a care in the world. And in the animal world, it's a very vulnerable position to show your belly, right? Because there's a lot of things out there that want to eat you. And so you've got arms and legs to to protect that. And but when he lays out like that, he is like the king of this house. There's such a strength in that for him that, he's being very, very vulnerable. And he's like, yeah, I can, right? He's kind of like he's struts it around the other cat, because there's a strength in it. There's a strength in that.
Yes, and if I may, your cat is showing that they feel safe. I can show my belly here. And I'll bet you 10 to 1, when you see your cat with the belly, your heart opens up. You want to go, oh, you're so sweet. Or like I have a little dog. It's the same thing. When he lies down, I can't help but to go over and scoop him up and, pet him. And to me, there's our longing. We're aching to be able to feel that safe that we could just expose our open bellies, our vulnerability with the feeling of, I'm going to be loved here. I'm not going to be criticized, shamed, put down, attacked. Uh, for example, if I'm vulnerable, I have safety, but my lady is going to go, what is it? Like she's going to want to lean into it, not, hey, I thought I was with a man. What are you doing? And I think our whole relationship with it has gotten torqued. So I think cats, dogs, they're teaching us something if we pay attention.
What are some of those other things that get in the way of listening?
Oh my God. Hundreds of things. Hundreds of things. And most often things that we have learned, accumulated over the years about what's right and what's wrong. And this is why I'm critical sometimes of psychology graduate studies, is because oftentimes they're taught in a very contracted way that you have to listen for pathology, like we were saying earlier. And that's why I thought when I wrote the book, I didn't want to just talk about defenses because there's a certain interpretation of what a defense is, that something's coming at me from the outside and I have to defend. But to me, a filter is what I've learned growing up and I'm still learning perhaps. So it's not just a defense about what's coming at me. It's a filter that stops my intuition. It works both ways. But what I've noticed, which has been a real blessing for me, is every time it filters in, there's a somatic contraction. So when I'm talking with a client, I can feel, oh, my stomach, I just suddenly felt a little tight. What? There's a filter here. There's something in my way of listening in the raw, of just being surrendered and open. Also, like you were talking about when you wake up in the morning, if I'm feeling this way or that way, there's almost always a somatic contraction going on. So again, kind of like vulnerability, okay, instead of that's bad, I shouldn't be contracted, it's an invitation to drop into that contraction. What's there? What's right underneath it? What am I maybe protecting? Or where did I just get hurt? Or who knows what? But to really pay attention to those things instead of, as we're taught, get rid of them because you shouldn't have them. They're all trailheads to exciting waterfalls or mountaintops or who knows what.
With all your years of working in your field, what have been some career highs and lows have you had over the years?
Wow, again, another dissertation length question. I'll tell you a story. When I was first a therapist, um, maybe 6 months into my practice, a psychiatrist who was feeding me clients referred a woman to me who he said had some anxiety issues. And she came in, and what I learned was she was what we used to call a polyfragmented multiple, DID. And she very hesitantly started to tell me some of the horror she lived with as a child. I mean, the kind of horror Stephen King couldn't stand. Just horror stories. And I thought, I have no idea how to work with this woman. It's so beyond anything I've ever heard of, thought of, was taught about. But what I knew I could do is listen. So I leaned in and I watched my body because she would say, this uncle did this thing to me, and I'll get, ugh, it would be like watching a horror film. So I could feel that and open it up and lean in and go, tell me more. What happened? What was it like for you? And oh my God. So I wasn't a therapist sitting back going, oh, mm-hmm. I was, holy crap, what? He did what? What was it like for you? And she started to tell me more and more and more stories. And early on, she said, I've worked with a dozen therapists. She was maybe in her 40s at that time. And she said, I've never told anybody these stories. And I was curious, well, so why did you tell me? She said, you're the first person that I believed really wanted to hear what it was like for me. I could tell when a therapist would sit back even a millimeter. I could tell it was too much for them. It was too much for me, and it was too much for them. So I would just start talking about my daily life. But with you really wanted to. The flip for me was instead of me thinking, oh, look at me, I'm the best therapist there is, I started thinking, you're my hero. It makes me want to cry right now. You lived something that I don't know that I could have survived. I might have killed myself or killed them when I got old enough, or I don't know what. But you're here for years searching for someone who would be really with you in the story. And you kept on searching and you didn't give up. And you're my hero. And one of the beautiful parts of that was I did a presentation at my old graduate school, CIIS here in San Francisco. She showed up for the talk. And I started telling this story about rather than therapists thinking we're all that and we're healing people, this woman is my hero. I've known her for 37 years. I still talk to her maybe once a quarter. We chat on the phone. And I still think about her like, oh my God, she should be celebrated as an amazing human being. And I still, I don't know, yeah, it's still hard to talk about because I'm blown away by her strength, her power, her integrity, her her longing to find someone who would just listen, not fix her, not heal her, just be with her as she, using again your term, navigate these horrors she had to live with. And we're totally in love. I'm totally in love with her. She's an amazing human being. I don't even, did I answer your question? Because I think I just went off a little bit.
You absolutely did. That is so beautiful. I love that. I love that. Because me, a person that comes from trauma, just hearing that you you want sometimes when you come from trauma like that, you want to be heard. That's the thing, you want to be heard. And a lot of times people don't want to hear you. They don't want to, a lot of times people come from trauma, people just dismiss your trauma or dismiss you. And that's the thing. Sometimes you being heard is part of the healing process for you. But I always tell people, for me, I feel like healing is you always healing because you could be triggered at any point in time in your life. Sometimes you think you might be over something, but then it could be a sound, a smell, or somebody raising a voice. It could trigger something within you. So it's just knowing how, like having the tools with counseling and therapy, just knowing how to navigate when certain things happen, you know how to handle
Yeah,
those things. That's why I'm a huge fan of counseling and therapy because it helps me to be able to, when those triggers come, or if they come, I might not, it could be a year or two, I could be triggered or something. I never know when it comes, it just come.
this comes.
But I know how to navigate when it do come.
Right.
Or even if I find myself getting depressed, I know the signs. Like when I start to feel withdrawn, or I see like, okay, why I don't want to eat, or why I'm not trying to get out of bed. Like, okay, I'm not. I can tell the signs. Like, wait a minute, hold on. Okay, I see what this is.
Take a breath.
Like, yeah, like, okay, like, no, we're not doing this. So I
Right.
know what to do because I start to see like it's a pattern starts. And I'm like, okay. okay, like what's going on? Like what happened? So I start to retrace like my steps, like what is bringing this on, or what did I is I'm feeling a certain kind of way, like what is happening? So I'll kind of figure out, okay, like what brought this on? Why is I'm starting to feel this way? So yeah, just paying attention to the small things, and sometimes me, because I care so much too. A lot of times being on these platforms, listening to people's stories, they going through different things. I internalize a lot too. So when people dealing with certain things and I'm helping them through certain things, sometimes I need a breather because a lot of things could be a bit much. And I be so concerned about people and, people be in other states. And I be like, oh man, I wonder, did they go to the emergency room? Did they go get help? Like, did they, so I'm like, okay, you need to take a break, like take a day off the app for a minute and just kind of regroup. So sometimes I have to do that for
Amen.
myself.
Yes. And to go back to what you were saying earlier about being dismissed, I think therapy types can fall into that. And the problem is they're probably not aware that they're being dismissive, but they're especially not aware of they're being dismissive because they're triggered. It's not that the client or whoever they're speaking to is disturbed. It's because whatever they said just hit me in a certain way. And so instead of me going, wow, I'm having this reaction, I'm curious about that. It's, wow, this doesn't feel comfortable. What's wrong with you? You know, and then we dismiss them. And that's what my hero, this woman, she stayed with it, even though she was dismissed over and over and over again. Her longing for true connection would not be squashed. So she kept on looking for real contact. So that's a great word to use. If we start to feel dismissed, don't think, wait a minute, I deserve to be dismissed or something's wrong with me. Think they don't know how to listen right now. They got triggered and they're not aware of it. They're a little lost. Don't take that on like another piece of shame. Don't take it on. It's their problem, not yours.
Wonderful. Well, if you could give one suggestion to somebody who might be on the fence about starting counseling, what suggestion might you give that person?
Well, I don't know that you'll like this answer. Go interview people. Like you're shopping for a couch. Sit on it, lie on it, throw the pillows around. Make sure it's a couch that fits you. Don't go to a counselor, therapist, psychologist thinking, well, they're the expert, so I have to figure it out with them. Find, go in really particular, finding someone that when you start to talk about what you want to talk about, they really want to hear from you. So allow yourself to be very particular about who feels right and who doesn't. And if they don't feel right, get out and go call somebody else. But we're so used to not being listened to that when people think of going to counseling or therapy, they think, why? It doesn't do any good. And that's why, because you're correct. You haven't been listened to appropriately, deeply. So go on a mission. Find someone who, when you sit down, you go, oh, you're really with me. This feels different. And then work it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's so important that that be the right fit, that we don't, as clients, that we're not trying to mold ourselves to the therapist, that we're trying to find a therapist that fits around us, who we are, without molding.
What a great way to put it. I never thought about it just like that. Right. We're so used to bending and stretching ourselves for them instead of, no, 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 no. Their job is to bend and mold around us to get us.
Yes.
Yeah, I
There,
like that.
there was a commercial for Capri Sun for like a kids drink in the 90s. And it was like these kids on a skate park, and they're made of water, right? When they drink the Capri Suns. And so they're all liquid and they can mold into any shape. And I always think about that commercial because when it comes to authenticity and trying to go, nope, I got to follow what's inside, right? I go, okay, no, what is my shape in this situation? Everything else needs to water around that. I'm not the water person to fit into whatever shape is around me.
Amen. Well said. Love it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been wonderful. Great discussion. We'd love to have you back on the show, maybe in the spring, maybe catch up. I think that would be wonderful. Your book is Listening in the Raw, Coming Home to Receptivity. That can be found on Amazon. And we'll also link the description and the link in the show notes because it's a wonderful, wonderful idea. I think listening holds so much value, especially in a world that's focused on talking.
Amen. Yes. And I
So
would happily join you in the spring if you wish.
we would love that. We would love it.
My name is Dr. Randall Alifano, and I need a counselor.
I'm Tanisha,
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
and so do you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us